Good evening and welcome to another wonderful episode of Eye on Port, which brings and exposes a lot of activities that happen around the port and maritime industry to you, and also bring you closer to the port industry. This week, we are going to talk about some of the frustrations that we've been seeing around doing business that are around the port industry ever since we all heard about this novel virus, that's the COVID-19 pandemic so far. So we'll deal with some of the domestic issues, we'll deal with some of the international issues, and then we'll deal with some individual issues. We'll also deal with corporation issues, we'll deal with regional issues as well, and then we'll deal with some associations and groupings and all of that, how this is frustrating their businesses as well. The program is proudly brought to you by Ghana Revenue Authority, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, also Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Community Network Services, that's GCNet, and West Blue Consulting. Media partner is the Business and Financial Times. So the Tuesday edition of the Business and Financial Times, you should read a lot more about what we discuss on this platform. Also tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. on GPHA television, a bridge version of the program will be aired on there. And then on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m., a bridge version of the program will be aired on Ghana television. Let me remind you that His Excellency the President of the Republic should be speaking to the nation at 8 p.m. and will be crossing over from here to that platform where the President will address the nation. So stand by. I'm sure by the time we're ending, the President will be ready to speak to the nation and will cross over for you to listen. So we initially had planned to have separate parts for this program. So the first part deals with some of the frustrations that we are seeing in the country right now. People are talking about demurrages, asking for rents, asking for waivers for demurrages and rents. We have seen some banks, queues at banks, and people are frustrated. And the banks are the banks that are operating around the port industry. Some of the banks have decided to close some of the branches and also cut their numbers and all of that. So around the port industry, there were just about two branches that were working, one for EcoBank, one branch EcoBank within the port, one Ghana Commercial Bank branch within the port that's working. It wasn't working well for the people. People were queuing. A whole lot of people were massed there trying to get their duties paid and all of that. Frustration. Then the second part, we're going to look at some of the trade issues internationally, then also nationally against our international partners. So, carting goods from Ghana to, say, Nigeria, carting goods to other countries and all of that. How is that going? They have been frustrated. People are complaining about, that not happening as we wish it is happening. Also protocols, regional protocols. We talk about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, for instance. A lot of people felt, or we knew that it was supposed to start from 1st July. Today we are hearing proposals that they should be postponed. How are all these things being dealt with? And those making the proposals, how do we come out of all these issues by the time COVID-19 will no longer be with us? We'll be dealing with the subject. I decided to break all of these down, take some time, break it down for you to understand. So you see on the screens the title for today's program, Frustrations, and it's inverted commas. And that's because we have been able to identify two meanings of the frustrations that you'll be seeing that we will talk about today. So that will come up as soon as we finish with letting you know some of the news items that's happening around the port industry, as well as going for our first commercial break. So the NUNGUA Warehouse Ghana Limited supports the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority with COVID-19 items. Let's go take a listen to that. When we come back, we'll explain the frustrations better, and we'll introduce our guests once again.
The NUNGUA Warehouse Ghana Limited has donated some items to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority to aid the Port Authority fight the spread of COVID-19 in the port. The NUNGUA Warehouse Ghana Limited is one of the lessees of the Port Authority in the business of importing liquid bulk through pipelines into tank farms developed on the land leased to the company. According to the company, it has observed with admiration the Port Authority's efforts in the fight against the spread of COVID-19 in the Port of Tema. In order to complement the efforts of the Port Authority, the company donated 100 cartons of alcoholic hand sanitizer, 20 packs of face masks, 10 packs of hand gloves, and 3 cartons of liquid soap. Presenting the items, the lawyer for the company, Jones Apple, said the port remains a critical aspect of the company's import trade, hence the gesture.
And I believe GPHA is very critical to the operations of a NUNGUA warehouse because basically we are importers. And without the harbour, we have no business.
Receiving the items, the General Manager of Administration at the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Alec Opon, thanked management of the NUNGUA Warehouse Ghana Limited for the gesture and promised that the items will go a long way to support the authority's fight against the COVID-19. He said, since the outbreak, GPHA has put in a lot of measures to protect the whole port community and that the donation has come at an opportune time.
We believe that this will go a long way to support us greatly. And we assure you that it will be put to good use to protect the whole portward community.
Okay, so a lot is happening around the port industry, and they're doing so much to ensure that we don't see the spread of this COVID-19. That's why a lot of institutions are donating. If you feel that you also want to donate to the frontline folks there, as well as to the entire Port Authority, so that they can be able to help people who do business around there to continue business. Because as you know, cargo is allowed to come into this country, and cargo is also allowed to go out of the country using the port, the seaport. We'll return pretty shortly after the break, though.
Here's innovation from Goyle that takes you further. New Goyle Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes have been expertly crafted with the latest in liquid engineering technology, highly advanced for modern engines, prolongs oil change intervals, save you fuel, clean, protect and enhance engine performance. The way engines work has become complex, and Goyle has innovated to stay ahead. Expertly crafted lubricants that work excellently with all petrol and diesel engines of today. New Goyle Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 lubes. Innovation that takes you further. Goyle. Good energy.
Dear valued client, the Ghana Trade Hub mobile app is now live to make it easy to track your consignment and know the estimated duty payable for both general goods and used vehicles. We are pleased to inform you that the Ghana Trade Hub mobile app is available for download on Google Play Store for Android users and the App Store for Apple users. The Ghana Trading Hub mobile app is now live. Download and never be cheated. This is powered by the Smart Ports project under the auspices of the Government of Ghana and the Ghana Revenue Authority. Smart Port, improving Ghana's ease of doing business.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Yeah. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Oh, how are you?
Hi Yvonne, a few words please. Everyone is talking about the fire at your production house last week. How are you holding up? Has production stalled?
No, not at all. My crew and everyone on my set is perfectly fine because I insure with Serene Insurance. As a matter of fact, I've had all my equipment replaced, including the vehicles that were affected. My workers have been sorted out. Even my production downtime has been covered. So it's all good. I have a meeting to attend to, so I have to get going. Sorry about that.
Which insurance company did you mention?
Serene Insurance, the new face of insurance, a member of First Sky Group.
Okay, welcome back to the program. So this evening we're talking about frustrations that are associated with the trade and protocols that are associated with trade and protocols as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are all seeing. And I mentioned to you earlier before we went on break is why and how some people are frustrated around the ports industry. Over the week, for instance, people were complaining about banking queues around the port industry. Let's listen to that and we'll be
back. Some freight forwarders in Tema are fuming with rage over the decision by banks who receive payments of duties at the port of Tema to close some of their branches and also operate with limited staff. Long queues characterize the Tema Longroom GCB Bank and EcoBank, which are the only banks accepting payments of duties with limited staff at the port. The queues made it difficult for the freight forwarders to observe the social distancing policy by government, which is a precautionary measure to fight against COVID-19. Checks by Ion Port revealed that the GCB banks and EcoBank branches at the Golden Jubilee Terminal and Safeborn Terminal were closed. Another factor which is also contributing to the long queues is the fact that the shipping lines were refusing to accept cash payments in their various offices, which hitherto was not so. Speaking in an interview with Ion Port, some of the frustrated freight forwarders said they have been standing in the queue under the scorching sun for a very long time. They also feared that the decision by the banks to open few branches and operate with limited staff will impede the speed at which clearance of goods could be done. The freight forwarders expressed worry that any delays in the clearance of their goods could lead to extra costs such as rents and demurrages.
What is happening currently, we are losing rent and demurrages because something that probably you could do in some few hours, you are doing it within days. And then it's costing us. No shipping line is giving you a waiver or whatsoever.
The Tema Sector Commander of Customs Division of GRA, Joseph Eduche, described the incident as unfortunate and said he had discussed with the Commissioner of Customs to find a lasting solution to the issue so that revenue mobilization doesn't suffer.
And immediately I sent a message to Commissioner of Customs Division. He also said he called the MDs of the two banks, and we are hoping that a solution will be found.
And indeed, as the Assistant Commissioner said, one of the banks, that's the Ghana Commercial Bank, had a release not too long ago. It says, cherished customer, we have resumed banking businesses in the following branches in Accra and Tema beginning Monday, 20th April 2020. And the branches are Trade Fair, Osu Oxford, Safeborn Terminal, which is in the port, and then Tema, as well as the Golden Jubilee Terminal, that's also within the port. So they're going to have the Safeborn Terminal open in the port on Monday. The Golden Jubilee Terminal will also be open in the port, aside the one around the Long Room area, which was open throughout. So 3 more branches will be open. We're yet to hear from EcoBank on this particular subject. We were supposed to call them, but they said that they are putting a lot of things in place. So hopefully, we should be getting good news again coming from EcoBank. And then the opening of the additional branches from Ghana Commercial Bank should suffice for business around the port. Another thing that over the week people expressed frustration about, and the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GPHA, is one of those who expressed frustration. I should be reading their letter to you shortly. A letter came from GPHA saying that they are pleading and appealing to government to appeal to shipping lines to waive demurrages in times like this, because not all of them can move from their homes if they are living in Kumasi, Tamale, to come to Accra or come to Tema and clear their goods. So they're asking for moratorium for rents as well as demurrages that came from the shipping, from the importers and Ghana Union of Traders Association. We are joined on the line by the executive, I always mess your name up. Okay, so he's a council member, Ship Owners and Agents Association of Ghana, Mr. Adam Imoro Ayana. Is on the line right now. Mr. Ayana, good evening.
Good evening, Sam. How are you? And good evening to all your listeners and viewers.
So, in the course of the week and even before last week, we had a lot of calls for you, people asking you to waive demurrages. And last week, the Ghana Union of Traders Association have officially written to government asking them to appeal to your members to waive demurrages. How is this sinking to you?
Thank you very much. We just have to put everything in context. You see, I mean, like from day one, I've been saying that GPHA or the importers are clients to the shipping line. And we all know that the situation that we are all in globally is not normal times. So what everybody was advised is that if you have an issue, because there are people also taking delivery of their goods in good time, but if for whatever reason you have an issue that you cannot take your cargo out or whatever it is, just notify your shipping line, because you're a cherished customer of your shipping line, and they will definitely come to the party. This was the advice we were given. But what I know is that people were looking for a blanket call that maybe waive this demurrage. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that, because the port is also open. What of cargo that came well before this whole issue started? What happens to them? You know, so we should tread cautiously. And I keep saying, if we have any issues and we talk to our shipping lines, who are our service providers, they would come to the party.
No, but Mr. Ayana, maybe they were expecting you to define the frame of the time frame for them where you can waive. So you can choose to say, we are waiving from the period when the president announced the movement restrictions up until when the movement restrictions will be taking off. Until then, you know, the demurrages are waived. Or you can say, okay, the past 2 weeks is already gone, but the last week that we had the movement restrictions, and the coming ones, if the president should announce any of that, then you can waive that off. So you probably can advise by defining a time frame.
Thank you, Samuel. First, I must say also, and I keep saying it, all these companies are private businesses. That is number one. Number two, I can also say confidently that now 7 free days has rather become the exception, not the norm. Majority of importers have between 14, 21, and 30 days, right? So when you look at the time frame, a lot of people even fall within that. So all I'm saying is, if they announce that they have to cancel demurrage and this, to what end? But if there is any issue, because I'm sure it's not everybody who is going to fall in demurrage. And if you fall in it within the time frame and you approach your line, they will definitely come to the party. It's the blanket thing that, I kind of worry. To what end? Where are we starting? From where to where? When will it end? And when, let's say, it's even 1 month, and after 1 month, this issue still continues, are we going to go the second month? Okay. Then are we going to go the third month?
So your main problem is the time frame?
No. That's not my main problem. My main problem is looking at the practicality of the issue, and then let's deal with the challenges. Okay. Right now, everybody is suffering. The shipping lines would also be coming up to then say that, okay, then the marine charges that I'm also paying, can the government or can the port or somebody also look at them and give me also a respite? Then we are going on and on. And even with this, I would rather expect a shipping line to approach the port directly and have a dialogue with them if they have a challenge. And we should do that in the whole scheme of things. I'm not against waiving demurrage. What would I gain? But the bottom line is, let's let the business practices thrive so that we would entrench them. And even after this, it becomes a new normal for all of us. Because they should have access to the shipping line. And we should encourage that they have access. And we should encourage the shipping lines to also listen to their clients. And I know they do that already.
Okay.
That's my stand.
Ms. Ayana, what about, you know, some of them have 7 days demurrage free, some have 21 days, some have 15 days and all of that. People are asking that at this point in time, can't you ask all the lines to say, do about 30 days demurrage free, instead of having it, you know, segregated the way it is currently? One would have 7 days, after which you accrue. One would have 21 days. Can't all of them just give about, say, 30 days demurrage-free period within this period?
Okay, it's a commercial decision, but I'll tell you something. At the end of the day, these shipping lines also pay a fee. There's a cost to them with these demurrage issues, right? So if there's anything, it's something that they would also have to go back to their principals and also seek clearance, depending on the circumstances on the ground. You know, that is why it's been difficult for these 3 days for anybody to give a blanket. But suffice to say, is there a challenge? If there's a real challenge, let's take that. If we look at the numbers of containers that are dropping and the numbers that are, we should look at the port turnaround time. What is happening with the turnaround time? What is happening with deliveries? When we assess all those things, then we can make an informed decision to say there is a peculiar challenge here. Let's deal with it.
Okay.
But if we all go blanket, it's like telling all the banks that slash all your interest rates. You know, but, I mean, guys.
I mean, that request has been made, though. But put that aside. Let me also find out from you, because people are saying that you should know that people are making sacrifices. Ministers of states are sacrificing half salaries. I mean, these are, you talk about your members being private operators, but they're operating within a country and they're operating within a society, and they can all see what is happening. So in times like this, I mean, commercial interest, can't it be a little lowered?
No, that is why when they are, you see, at the end of the day, you might have 5 containers on, let's say, shipping line A, 2 containers on shipping line B. What stops the people from contacting? These are people that they dealt with from the time that they actually ship their cargo to date. What is wrong with just reaching out to them and saying, hey guys, I have a problem here. I can't take delivery of this, or because of this, I'm delayed. So can you look at it? I'm sure every shipping line would understand. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So let me bring a release that I just got from the minister's office to your notice. It's coming from the minister's office to an agency requesting that, so I'll read some portion of it. It says, reference His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's announcement on 27th March 2020, which imposed restrictions on movement of people within the Greater Accra and Greater Kumasi part of measures to curb the spread of novel coronavirus, that's COVID-19 pandemic. The said restrictions exempted the movement of goods and other essential services. Consequently, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, in collaboration with the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority and other key stakeholders, took steps to ensure the continuous operations of 2 main seaports of Tema and Takoradi, with a view to ensuring the regular supply of goods. It is the understanding of the ministry that a number of unintended consequences have resulted from the current state of affairs. For instance, while some peculiar circumstances have prevented some shippers from clearing their cargo from the port, others have also encountered some challenges in the process. The effect of these developments and the far-reaching consequences on the shipping public may altogether defeat the fight against the novel COVID-19. In the light of the foregoing, I hereby direct, and that's the Minister for Transport, direct that you communicate to all relevant stakeholders the suspension of all applicable charges, that is demurrages, detention and storage rent charges on cargo which have remained uncleared since the lockdown came into effect on 30th March 2020. This directive is to ensure that shippers and other stakeholders do not take actions that may jeopardize government's efforts to curbing the spread of the virus on the basis of averting the accumulation of cost in the clearance of their cargo. So this is coming from the Minister of Transport, Mr. Ayana. I don't know if you've cited this document, but how does that come to you?
Minister of Transport to who?
Well, it's directed to the Ghana Shippers Authority to appeal well, to get in touch with you and inform you on this directive, I think.
Okay, so the minister is directing
is directing a state agency to communicate to you.
Shipping agencies. So the minister is instructing that shipping agencies should cancel their demurrage, etc.
Yes. It's instructing the state agency to eventually give you this directive that's coming from him. So I'm sure you will definitely receive this directive getting into the future, the very near future.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
But you made a statement. I mean, we haven't received any formal communication.
Okay.
But you made a mention of sacrifice. And like I said, everybody is sacrificing. My mention of saying that these are private businesses is such that private businesses take decisions based on whatever dynamics each individual have. It's not a wholesale issue. But at the end of the day, are they not sacrificing also running into Ghana by about 40%, 50%, 60% cargo volume? Are they not also sacrificing by, if you recall, even when the lockdown hadn't been announced and we were all anticipating, by going to the office on Saturdays and Sundays to try and amalgamate the situation? So at the end of the day, everybody is trying to make a sacrifice. You know,
and at this point, you have been requested to your members have been requested to sacrifice the demurrage. Do you think that per this directive, should you get a copy, your folks should be able to comply?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It would be a challenge for me to speak to that.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
I don't know if maybe the minister might have contacted some of them, and like I said, demurrage is not an issue for the local shipping agency. It's something that they have to go to their principal. So I cannot speak to that.
I'm going to let you off the hook, and then we'll revisit this subject, the demurrages, the rent, and all of that, and some of the other issues, the challenges that are emerging as a result of this whole restrictions we're seeing into the future. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. But Sam, before I go, let me just make a quick point.
Okay.
My quick point is, in all these situations, dialogue is very important for all parties to communicate, understand themselves, look at the dynamics, and look at the reality of the situation. Because when all this is over, we are going to start a new normal.
Yeah.
And it's imperative and important that we start looking at the new normal and try to entrench it now. So if online platforms are not working through the banks, the shipping lines, let's look at it and fix it. If there are any delays, I mean, for me, I keep telling the shipping lines, apart from bills of lading exchange, I don't see why people should even go to their offices. So we have to also look at those processes so that people can sit in their homes and do a lot of these things with minimum contact with the various shipping lines and other stakeholders.
Okay.
Thank you very
much. You talked about that, Mr. Ayana, a quick one. As you talked about online, also one of the accusations that have been brought against some of your members is the fact that some of them are also not doing online transactions. That's not helping within this period.
No, I mean, they might have a point. I wouldn't hold you for anybody. But
so that means that you agree that some of your members are not doing the online transactions?
They should bring it to our attention. They should bring it to my attention.
I'm bringing it to you because some companies have been mentioned, and that's what I'm trying to bring to your notice now.
Okay, who are those you're saying?
You mean specific companies that are not online?
No.
You had the piece that we just played not...
Sorry, if there are companies who are not online, who are not helping the situation, please, they should bring it out so that we will look at how best they can, if they are not, then how best they can also come on stream so that we can identify, do they have any challenges, whatever it is. At the end of the day, we all want to win.
Yeah.
And we all want a stress-free business environment. So like I'll keep saying, dialogue is the key to all this, and we should all be prepared to look at the new normal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ayana. Thank you very much. Adam Imoro Ayana is a council member, Ship Owners and Agents Association of Ghana, talking to us about some of the difficulties that traders have, some difficulties that freight forwarders have, and some difficulties that business is struggling. And all of these is coming as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are witnessing. And that's why we have our topic, the frustrations that are emerging as a result of this COVID-19 when it comes to trade and some protocol. So my guest today in the studio already is Mr. Emmanuel Donikwame, he's the Secretary General, International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. Mr. Donikwame, good to see you. And he's very important here because his organization, the International Chamber of Commerce, has already made a call to the World Health Organization, and the World Health Organization has also made calls to businesses, and including his organization, to help deal and manage this COVID-19 pandemic. Otherwise, businesses are going to suffer. Also on the line and joining us Skype is Mr. David Ofosu Dote. He's a legal practitioner and a senior partner with AB and David Africa. Mr. Dote. Oh. Hello, Mr. Ofosu Dote. Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you see us? Just give us a wave small. Good. Okay. So that's Mr. Ofosu Dote. He's going to help us a lot when it comes to the regional, some of the big regional bodies as well as associations. If you take the African Continental Free Trade Area, for instance, people are calling for it to be postponed, the implementation to be postponed. And he has done a lot of work for the African Continental Free Trade Area. So also joining us on the line is Jean-Marie Kofi. He's the Secretary General of Port Management Association of Western Central Africa, PMOCA. Mr. Kofi. Hello, Mr. Kofi.
Hello.
Bonsoir, am I right? Good evening, Mr. Kofi. Is it bonsoir?
Good evening, Mr. Samuel.
Okay, so where are you now? I suppose you should be in Abidjan, is it?
Yes, I am in Abidjan now.
Okay, let me start with you from where you said, because you are the Secretary General for International, the Port Management Association of Western Central Africa. Share with us, ever since this pandemic started, the ports around the Western Central African region, what's been the impact so far?
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. I take this opportunity to say hello to West and Central Africa port authorities who are at work to support our economy. COVID-19 disease is real, Mr. Samuel, but talking about the impact on maritime activity in our geographic area is a bit premature, given that activities are currently proceeding normally. The maritime borders are not closed, so it's difficult. What I'm talking now is that the activities is proceeding now. Everything is going very well.
Okay. Because
the importers have already done the orders before this coronavirus starts in Africa. So the goods you got now is what you have already done or have already do it. So you receive our orders. That is what happened now in most of our ports.
I see. Is there any port that you know that at the moment has shut down or closed within Western Central Africa?
No. In our geographic zone, maritime activity are not interrupted, at least, although having closed the land and the air borders, government allowed maritime borders to be open for import and export of goods.
Okay.
So they continue the activities.
Okay. And the goods that are coming and going out of these ports within West and Central Africa, are they all goods or they are just specific goods? What some people are describing as essential goods?
The good they come.
Okay.
I think what I'm talking about for importation, for imports.
Yeah.
All the imports, they are all the goods. And because of this coronavirus disease, they have some of priorities to clear all these goods. And for export, you have agricultural products and raw materials continue to go. But our problem, perhaps in few months, it will be the container, the empty container, whose goes and are not coming back. That is our problem now.
Okay, let me ask the question again, because if you take here in Ghana, for instance, there were initial suggestions that the country should be dealing with, or the seaport should only be accepting imports of essential goods. So people can only clear what we call essential goods. That is pharmaceutical, foods and food product here and there. Are there ports that are clearing just only essential goods, pharmaceuticals and foods only?
No, I don't think about this. What I'm talking is that there are priorities.
Okay.
The priorities is become from essential goods, is foods and pharmaceutical medicine, something like this. But if in the import you have vehicle, they have another goods, they can clear it, but it's not a priority for port members, for port area, for platform,
okay,
for customs. Because of this coronavirus,
okay,
they have some of the priorities, but they don't delay another goods. They work with all the goods.
Okay. And you just heard me talking to the SOAG, Ship Owners and Agents Association of Ghana, about waiving of demurrages and rents here in Ghana. What's the situation like across other ports within the sub-region? Are demurrages and rents waived in other ports?
Can you come again?
Okay, so I said demurrages and rents and port charges as a result of, penalties, as a result of delay in clearing goods from the ports. Are some other ports within the region waiving demurrages and rents? Okay, so if there is, I think then we have difficulty reaching that.
I don't catch you well.
Okay, rents, if you take penalties for people not clearing goods out of the ports in time. So demurrages, the shipping lines will charge demurrage, and then the port authority will charge rent. Are there ports that if you at this point in time within this pandemic, if you are not able to clear your cargo on time out of the port, you don't pay any penalty, for instance?
Okay, what we are talking about, if I understand very well, is that for the export, you have some of a choice, is it?
Okay, no, I'm talking about imports. So assume that I import goods into Ghana, and because of the restriction movement we have in Ghana, I am not able to clear my goods from the port on time. I am supposed to pay penalty. To the shipping lines, it is called demurrage. To the port authority, it is called rent, because I have abandoned my goods at the port and it is accrued rent. Have you seen some other ports within the region that are saying, no, because of this period, don't pay these penalties?
No.
Okay.
To our knowledge, all goods are subject to custom clearance.
Okay.
Although it's true that goods classified essential are those relate to food or medicine appear priority in mini ports.
Okay.
So they have to clear all, but they have some of a priority, and customs knows the priority on the government.
Okay. Finally, before I left you, I let you off the hook. Do you foresee that we will get to the point where ports will be forced to close?
No, we do not foresee it. And it is not desirable since the observation of the well-appear barrier measure make it possible to cope with the pandemic.
Okay.
So I think you don't think about this one this way.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Kofi, Jean-Marie Kofi. I may come back to you shortly. Let me go to the other side and talk quickly to Mr. David Ofosu-Dortey, the legal practitioner and senior partner with AB and David Africa. Mr. Ofosu-Dortey, good evening again. Hello, Mr. Ofosu-Dortey.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening, Solomon.
Okay. So I want to find out from you, and I know that you've done quite a number of works for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, for instance. To what extent has this pandemic affected the AFTA?
In a number of ways. I mean, for starters, between 2018 March and now, there was quite a lot of movement towards start of trade in July this year. And every single deadline of the CFTA process had been met. And everybody was on course for the start of trade on July 1 until COVID came from nowhere, as it were. Even by the time the heads of states were meeting in February in Addis, I don't think even at that time it was anticipated that COVID will have this impact. But the impact has come in a number of ways. I mean, if you take it starting from Ghana as an example, the start of the operationalization of the secretariat here in Accra, which was supposed to begin at the end of March, definitely hasn't taken place. That's obvious. I am aware that the Secretary General was sworn in Addis, and I think to the best of my knowledge, is working out of Addis. So that's one impact already. Also, there are a number of protocols on the AFCFTA which have to be negotiated, rules of origin, competition, etc. Definitely with restrictions on travel, it is obvious that that can only happen online. So I expect that these negotiations will slow down. And then, of course, the question of start of trade itself in July, I'm not so sure. My intelligence as at date is that there are two schools of thought: those who want to push to January 1st, 2021, and those who want to stick to it. Of course, I belong to those who think, notwithstanding the pandemic, at least even if for symbolic reasons, we must stick to it. I mean, we can talk about that later. But having said that, I think a couple of other things are worth talking about. If you look at the whole issue about the attention span to the AFCFTA, if I were a government official, whether the Minister of Trade or the Minister of Finance or at the very top, I don't expect that I will have paid much attention to AFCFTA at this time, when the principal issue to deal with is the health and life of the people. So I believe that among the leaders, it must have suffered some attention deficit, for want of a better word. And then that naturally will lead to the fact that the commitment of some of the countries may be reduced. It will not have the same impetus that it had before COVID-19. But if you take it from a trade perspective, I think there are two things worth looking at as the impact that we are seeing. Closure of borders. I heard you ask the previous speaker whether any ports have been closed, and he did say all the ports are operational. Of course, most of the countries who have imposed restrictions have exemptions for essential items, and as a result, the ports are operating. But the borders are closed.
Yeah.
So, like he said, unless the goods were already on its way, or unless the port of origin allows the good to originate and come to our ports, or through both our land, the seaports and the airports, definitely there is reduced activities at the ports. That means naturally that trade volumes is going to decrease. I mean, from where I sit, if you had the fact that we had managed to increase trade up to 18% as intra-Africa trade, I expect a significant reduction in intra-Africa trade this year, taking us back to perhaps what we had about 6-7 years ago, and that's definitely something that we have to pay attention to. And of course, businesses on the continent are having stresses. We all know that financial issues regarding that. So you don't expect them to ramp up production, especially at the point that they cannot export. So goods for domestic consumption, yes, but in the absence of open borders, in the absence of free movement, in the absence of, or in the presence this time rather, of restrictions on businesses which are producing, because if you, for example, you operate a factory and you cannot walk to the factory to produce at full strength, definitely all these are going to affect the ability to produce. And even when the restrictions are lifted, I expect that it will affect our trade volumes this year. So these are, for me, just off the top of my head, some of the very significant impacts on the CFTA that we will see, or which we are already seeing in some of them. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that you were of the school of thought that we can go ahead with the implementation from 1st July. Assume we do that and we still have our border restrictions. How else do we ensure compliance to some of the protocols that's supposed to, for instance, allow free movement and all of that, free movement of goods and all of that?
I mean, border closure should be separated from the symbolism of commencement of trade. I mean, that's where I sit. I'm not oblivious to the fact that, and I did mention it myself, that the borders are closed. But the 1st of July, if it slips, will be the only date that the start of trade will slip. Of course, it will not be the end of the world if it slips and go to January 1st, 2021. I mean, that will be fine. But the reason why I think we should stick to it is for the symbolic reason, that's one. And two, it also does something more significant than the symbolism. What it does is that once we have the borders closed, within the borders, countries which have, actually prepared their strategy on the, if you follow the Agenda 2030 protocols very well, you will know that aside the CFTA, there's supposed to be a preparation by each country of the boosting intra-Africa trade strategies, the BIATs. If a country has prepared this BIAT very well, I expect those countries to be ramping up production or encouraging people who are, or industries in the areas where export is likely to lead, to be doing, preparing for the trade. So if you stuck to that 1st July date, it is a signal that companies and governments should start preparing. The third aspect, which I think why the symbolism is important to me, is that it doesn't make us go to sleep. It makes us do the things that we are able to do within the period. And then when trade starts, no matter how hard you try, the start of trade will take a while for it to pick up full steam. So if we kept it, then we can do a fair bit of preparation, doing negotiations online through video conference and things like what we are doing, looking at instruments that we can look at without, necessarily being present in one room and work from home, etc., so that it puts some pressure on all of us to prepare and hit the ground running when COVID is over.
Do you think that COVID has affected any of the protocols that that had been set out within the AFTA, for instance? Do you think that there are some protocols that with the emergence of COVID-19 we should take a relook at?
I have not taken my time to take a look at them. What I have been looking at generally are what the laws across Africa that may have to be changed in individual countries as a result of AFTA. Perhaps this is something that we need to look at. Nothing comes off the top of my head. I rather look at the positive sides of COVID as well. And those are things we can talk about if we want to go into it. But I think that
you can brief us. If you have a point or two to share some of the positives you think, you can share with us.
Well, don't let's say positives aside. There cannot be any positive side of such a bad event. But in every situation, how you respond to it is actually more important than the event itself. And I think as a country, or as most African countries, we are responding to it very well with the lockdown, the social distancing, etc. But what about the post-COVID era? Let me give you some examples of what we can do that can, as it were, reduce the adverse impact. So that's a better way to put it rather than positive. So one of them is, for example, to require all African countries to adjust their BIAT, not necessarily the protocols, to adjust their BIAT and present to the AU and the Secretariat what I call a COVID impact analysis of AFCFTA for each country. And just so you know, I belong to an organization called Afro Champions. That's in my night life, not my day life. And this organization, Afro Champions, have already issued its recommendations to the AU in this regard. And this is one of the things we recommend. Because if each country did that and did an adjustment of its BIAT, so it's a kind of an adjusted BIAT plan for each country, it will tell us some of the things that we can do better. And a typical example is the fact that one of the things COVID has taught us is that supply lines don't necessarily have to depend in one region of the world. I mean, I think the West has learned a bitter lesson. I mean, when I talk about the advanced countries, that depending wholly on China as an example, as part of their supply chain or as the main supply chain, has not necessarily been something that can be kept going for a future in the occurrence of events like this. But that lesson is more actually opposite for Africa. I mean, talking about now having us to recourse to local producers for PPEs, for masks, for hand sanitizers, etc. The good thing we can do is to now see how we can actually domesticate a lot of our purchases and use public procurement as one of the tools where we can let industries grow and domesticate a lot of things that we rather used to import. And the other thing is that if we actually did negotiations very well with all investors, both domestic and foreign investors, we could see Africa and some countries in Africa becoming an alternate base of supply chain of some items. And I think that's one of the areas that we need to look at and react properly. The other thing that is worth mentioning is that we may have to, as African countries, coordinate our response to COVID in such a way that COVID becomes an impetus for increasing intra-Africa trade rather than for decreasing it. So you can look at it from that point of view, because the end result of this is that it may be better to buy more from fellow African countries than to constantly be looking at China and other countries outside Africa.
Yeah. Earlier, I was trying to let viewers know that on our topic there, we have frustrations in inverted commas associated with trade and protocols due to COVID-19 pandemic. And we put the frustration in inverted commas because we're looking at two separate meanings of them. One, the literal or the ordinary meaning, which is not being frustrated by a pandemic like COVID. And then the second, you being a lawyer would know, and probably educate us better, would be frustration in legal terms, where an event that nobody or no party foresaw, and it has happened, and it is making it impossible to perform a certain contract arrangement. If you get back to the work that you do so well, which is helping the AFTA, do you think we factored some of these events, whether foreseen or unforeseen events, in drafting the protocols of AFTA, for instance? Maybe not necessarily in the nature of pandemic like COVID, but did we foresee some of these things in drafting some of our protocols?
You have to see AFTA in the sense of an international treaty between 54 countries who have signed and the 30-odd countries who have ratified. And when you want to talk about frustration, frustration cannot be foreseen. So the question of foreseeing it is, I'm sure you are trying to go on the border between frustration and force majeure.
Force majeure.
In force majeure, the parties who enter into a contract will normally list the events that, if they occur, the contract will deem to have, fallen into the arena of force majeure, and they will normally predict and put a circle around those force majeure events. But frustration, which is similar to force majeure, normally you will not foresee it, you will not predict it, but it makes your contract or your agreement impossible to perform. And that's the difference. Now, if you take an international convention of this nature, definitely it has been quote and unquote frustrated in that regard. But I would not want to use the word frustrated in legal sense, so I prefer your quotes. Okay. Because all that has happened is that it has not made the AFCFTA void, which is what often happens in frustration events. It may result in a delay. And again, just to conclude on that point, we should not confuse an international treaty of this nature with an individual contract where a party may claim force majeure or frustration as a result of the COVID, depending on the context. And we can take it on the case of an individual basis and just draw an illustration. But in respect of the AFCFTA, I think everything is going on. It may just be a question of change of start of date at West.
Okay. Thank you. I'll let you rest and bring, on that frustration and force majeure note, come down to Mr. Doni Kwame, because his organization, the International Chamber of Commerce, had a release out, Mr. Doni Kwame, and you had advice on the force majeure bit, and also you had advised companies and businesses on a number of things. There's a survey that you are undertaking. First of all, you start sharing with us what the survey is about, and then we'll move to the frustrated aspect and then the force majeure aspect.
Thank you for having me. The International Chamber of Commerce has signed this agreement with the World Health Organization to gather information on global business response on the impact of the pandemic on their businesses, especially on its influence on their supply chain, on their employees, on their customers, etc. And we launched this thing about 2 weeks ago. We're gathering enough information. As at this afternoon, we realized that we've gotten some good response from businesses in Ghana. Those in the US are far ahead, despite Trump's withdrawal of funding for the WHO. Okay. And we should know that the virus knows no borders. Yeah. And we teamed up with the WHO because we share in their 3 principles of science, solutions, and solidarity. The private sector has a key role to play in the bit that has to do with science, in the production of pharmaceuticals, sanitizers, test kits. When it comes to solutions, we also key in the production of ventilators, etc. And then the issue of solidarity, we need to work together. That's how come our first release had to do with a call on the G20 and the G7 to come together. Countries should not see it as a national issue where they close their borders unilaterally, but they need to have a lockdown universally. At least people should share data and share information at the UN level, at the WHO level. So solidarity amongst private sector associations to draw synergies together to make sure global supply chains are still intact, to make sure the essential goods that are needed at the right place at the right time get there to save lives and then livelihoods. So in short, we call in on the private sector or the business community in Ghana to participate in this particular survey. It just takes 5 minutes to fill those forms.
And where do they get the forms?
It's online. Okay. You can get it on the ICC website. We've sent it to almost, we've also sent it to almost all the media houses. So we expect Eye on the Pot to have it on their online platform so that people can click. We get in the Trade Hub to have it on the Trade Hub together with West Blue to have it on the Trade Hub. We also have some media houses such as your partners, Business and Financial Times, who have it on their online platform, so that businesses can click and then just fill in the forms.
Okay. What are some of the basics on the form that you expect the businesses to provide?
We developed it together with the WHO, and we've picked on. It's a simple questionnaire that looks at the impact of the pandemic itself on your supply chain. And it gives the necessary feedback on how private sector can help reduce its effect. Okay. So you look at things like issues to do with lockdowns, its impact on your operations. And also we believe that the feedback will help provide the necessary information across sectors within the global economy.
Okay. Okay. And then aside the survey, I know that you made a proposal on some clauses that businesses should begin to look at.
Before that, we also realized that we need to save our SMEs. Listening to the previous panelists, I realized that we have issues. Yeah. And then these brought to the fore our main projects that we've been pursuing in the past. How do we develop a paperless and a cashless economy? To see cues, that tells us that we've been calling for a cashless economy, but we are not there yet. You know, so that the pandemic is brought to the fore, the issues that has to do with how do we create a cashless economy. We also talk of going paperless at the port. Yes, we've gone paperless at the MPS terminal, but I understand we still have problems at the airport, the Kotoka International Airport. They are yet to go paperless. People still carry documents to get their goods cleared. So that's one. And then the issue of notification. If you pick the case of GPHA, you may have contracts, but you do fill forms on a daily basis. And most of these forms, more or less, are contracts. So if you need to clear your goods at the port, and then you're worried about issues to do with demurrage, definitely you need to notify the other party. The ICC position, it's quite clear that we are in different times, as you call it, a new normal. You need to notify your parties if you have a contract with them. And then you need to check if you have a force majeure clause in the contract. And then once you have a force majeure, you also have to check if pandemics and pandemics are listed in there.
Okay, so you're expecting parties to look into their contracts critically to ensure that there are force majeure clauses
in their contracts.
When they find the force majeure clauses, of course, force majeure, the event that also
or circumstance,
or the circumstance must be embedded within the clause.
Yeah.
If
you have pandemics and epidemics, then you look out for the applicable law, and then you engage a lawyer to look at your national applicable laws that apply to circumstances of this nature. Because the lockdowns were not commissioned by any of both parties. It was commissioned by the state, yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. So this is advice that ICC is giving to businesses, or what?
These are challenging times, so it is the ideal time for you to actually look at your contracts, you know.
Okay.
And then for you to engage your other parties. It's more to do with dialogue. Okay. These are circumstances beyond each other party's control, so you definitely have to start talking to your
But this can only suffice when you are entering or forming new contracts. Contracts that have been formed before the pandemic, and you can't apply the force majeure because it was not foreseen, and so you did not include it in there.
Then it's possible you did not engage a lawyer, because if you have a proper lawyer drafting such contracts, it's not only pandemics or epidemics that are captured under the list of events and circumstances under force majeure. There are a long list.
Yeah.
You know, a long list, wars and
yes, wars, government interventions, and all of that.
So a very good contract usually has that.
Yeah.
And our draft templates on the ICC website, we have the long force majeure and we have the short ones. A very detailed one. If you,
I see. That often includes pandemics and all that?
Yeah, we do have pandemics in there.
I see.
So in case you have a contract that did not list pandemics and epidemics in yours, you need to engage a lawyer to look at the national applicable law. Yeah.
Okay. Assume that you did not even have a clause at all. You did not have a force majeure clause at all. At this point in time, is there anything you are advising businesses to do again?
It's more of notification. You take the case of the ship owners and then GPHA.
Yeah.
You know, the ship owners just act that you need to notify us. These are circumstances beyond everybody's control. You may call it an act of God, but you need to engage your parties. You just don't sit idle and then just assume that, hey, he should understand we have a problem, you know. There are financial implications, and mostly we really don't know what's going to happen tonight, whether the lockdown will be extended. But some contracts may terminate naturally.
Yeah.
People are looking at roughly beyond 120 days. If there will be no performance, we are better off just calling it off. And if there are some refunds, you just have to refund. Yeah.
Okay. Let me break it down, and I will ask you this so that somebody can actually relate. And you mentioned the traders, for instance. So assume that you are an importer. You have imported something from the US, for instance, and you were expecting the goods to get into Ghana by, let's say, April 17th, by which time you can also supply to somebody else. It's already April 17th, the goods are not coming. The reason you are getting is that the vessel that even brought your goods is already sitting at anchorage because there's a suspected case of COVID there. It will take about 2 weeks per the SOPs, the port has, about 2 weeks before we bring the suspect out, go and test, take him back. If it happens that he's positive, we have to quarantine the vessel at the anchorage for about 2 weeks. Maybe you, as a business person, you may have promised somebody to bring him the goods. At this point in time, you cannot deliver that. And you may want to say, I'm not able to deliver this because of the pandemic. And the person who is also waiting for his goods from you is saying that, look, whether pandemic or not, I need my goods, and that's what we agreed on. These two people, where is your advice fitting for them?
That's why we use the word reasonable time. And I believe all this can be done within 120 days. There can be performance within the 120 days, despite the lockdown, because I don't see how the test, no matter how NUNGUA and others will delay, I believe within 120 days, you should be able to get your goods out. The volumes have dropped, so I don't think we have that much traffic. There is even traffic on the streets. For you to say traffic moving up and down is a problem. And then at the port, activity is also gone down. My worry is to see the long queues at the banks, you know, because we were keen on setting up a paperless regime at the ports and also developing or creating a cashless economy. So we expect the banks to address that bit.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Okay. I'll get back to you again on this advice that you are giving, because you are giving a very fine advice, but I'm wondering whether you need to widen the scope a little bit beyond the force majeure clause that you are seeking parties to begin to interrogate in their contracts. If I didn't know about force majeure, I didn't know that I should have included a clause in a contract that I have signed already. And this natural event of COVID-19 has come, for which reason I'm not able to perform my side of the agreement or contract with a second party. What advice can the ICC given to businesses in this category?
Engage a lawyer immediately.
Okay.
To look at the national applicable laws.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And are there interventions also coming, practical interventions again, coming from ICC aside as advice?
We call in on governments to come up with stimulus packages, and luckily for us, our government has one. And then to allow cash to flow into the economy, and also to get to vulnerable businesses that are really being hit by the pandemic, and also to relax on some trade barriers, especially for essential goods. And then also, if it's possible, to come up with some tax reliefs for these essential goods. Maybe temporarily, but not permanently, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Jean-Marie Kofi, if you are on the line, I'm getting a message from somebody who says he's Abdullahi Koulibaly, a Malian bonded warehouses in Ghana, the Emega, that's where he is. And he says he wants to inform us that the Minister of Transport of Cote d'Ivoire has ordered the cancellation of all penalties, that is port rent and demurrages of shipping lines, as measures to support business operators. He has added a letter to that effect that's been signed by the Minister of Transport of Cote d'Ivoire. Do you know about this?
I don't catch you very well. Please, can you come on again?
Okay. So I just got a message from Abdullahi Koulibaly with Malian bonded warehouses here in Ghana. And he says that the Minister of Transport of Cote d'Ivoire has ordered the cancellation of all penalties, port rent and demurrages of shipping lines as measures to support business operators. Are you aware of this?
Yes, as I told you that every government make some of negotiation with the exporter and the importers. The problem is that for this coronavirus, there is some of priorities, and we work very well. Abidjan work very well with Malian pupils, with Malian exporters. So they have some of how to say contract with Abidjan import to export some of goods to be, that is one of the case I want to find out. And it depends of each country. In Abidjan, they do very well this traffic with Mali, and they have a contract with Mali. From San Pedro to Mali, from Abidjan to Mali, they have the same advantage to do this traffic. Yes, I am aware for this contract this Abulai talk about.
Okay, so that means that...
Solomon, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, Solomon, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, this is Samuel, Mr. Fosu.
Samuel, yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so,
I was following the argument being made by the gentleman in the studio. Pardon me, the name doesn't come in handy.
Mr. Doni Kwame with the International Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, he was talking a lot about the ICC's advice and issues relating to force majeure, etc. I missed some of the things he said. The line dropped, so pardon me if I got him wrongly. But I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we should avoid the danger of assuming that just because of COVID, every single event is either frustrated or have gone into force majeure. Because there are two parties as a minimum to every agreement. If the shipment of your goods as a person who is the supplier or any person who is a manufacturer has been affected by COVID, remember that there's a consignee and a receiver who is also affected at the other end. And let me illustrate with an example of exactly what you were talking about. If, for example, your goods were supposed to arrive at with me, and at this time I'm the buyer, on April 17th, and let's assume that the country of origin, the imposition of COVID was made on, let's say, 26th of March as an example, or let's say 30th of March, just to illustrate. I will not let you simply get away with a simple argument that your contract to supply has to be delayed because of a force majeure event or has been frustrated for that matter. Because everybody knows that it will take a certain period or number of weeks to do shipment. I will check the shipment period and check if, for example, if your shipment from the country of origin to Ghana is, let's say, 2 weeks, had you shipped by that time?
Yeah.
Because if you are shipped by that time, then certainly it will be on the high seas and may not necessarily be caught by the imposition of restrictions in the country of origin.
Yeah.
Secondly, I will check whether the country of origin and the country of destination have got exemptions for the goods I'm buying from you. Because not every item is caught in the restrictions. Some of them are, if you take, let's say, the electricity sector, items for the supply of electricity are exempted. So the COVID will not affect it.
Yeah.
Once I will allow a 3-day delay because of queue at the port in clearing, it will be dangerous for us to say that just because of COVID, every contract is either frustrated or has suffered force majeure. The other issue which I'm not quite clear about, I need to take a look at it again, is the directive regarding the waiver of both demurrage and shipping and rent. I was of the view, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are in the port, that one of them belongs to the shipping line. I'm not so sure whether it means the government is going to reimburse them for that. I would have thought that it is the part belonging to the government that should have been waived. Anyway, but that's just a thought.
Okay, so on that one, the demurrage and rent, let me start from there. The demurrage is the one that belongs to the shipping lines, and they are private operators, private business. The rent is the one that is charged by the state agency, the Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority. So what you were saying is that the demurrage that is charged by the private operator, government can't necessarily force them to waive it. But the one that's being charged by the state agency,
I'm saying that if the government does that, it will be cost. That means that the government will increase its cost. That's what I'm saying.
But what if the government chooses to appeal? They may not necessarily say waive it. Then it becomes their burden to replace it. But if the government is appealing for it to be waived,
well, I mean, it will come back. It will come back to me trying to have some waiver in terms of taxes. All I'm trying to draw attention to is that at the end of the day, the effect on government's revenue for COVID is going to be very, very heavy.
Okay.
And these are some of the additions to it that I'm seeing.
Okay. I'll bring you to that because we heard the finance minister in this week calling and with an article in the papers asking for advice on what a finance minister within the African region should do at this point in time. So I'll come back to that shortly. But let me take you back to the force majeure that Mr. Doni Kwame talked about and pick your view on the fact that the ICC is requesting businesses to take keen interest in force majeure clauses within their contract, particularly within this period. So they're asking businesses to get back to contracts they have entered into and ensure that some of these clauses favor the contracts that they worked on, and then they can take advantage and hide behind force majeure clause.
Well, that's the point I was
trying to make. That's the advice they gave.
No.
Okay.
Can I clarify?
Okay, he wants to
clarify. Let me clarify. It's not an advice.
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. What
I just find it a bit surprising. I do not think that anybody will just be advising people to
take one second.
Let me clarify.
Let him clarify for you.
What?
Okay.
Yeah. The ICC position, it's got nothing to do with an advice to businesses.
Okay.
We're just drawing attention that we are in abnormal times.
Okay.
These are not normal times.
Okay.
And then people have contracts, written contracts. Those without contracts, you do fill forms.
Yeah.
Okay, but someone...
So as a standard...
one second, he's still on, he's explaining.
Yeah. So as a standard guide, we all go to the ports, you fill all kinds of forms.
Yeah.
These are contracts, whether you like it or not, you know. And you are supposed to honor some obligation. Now we have COVID-19. We've written contracts. It's a simple, straightforward 5-step guide. Yeah. If you have a written contract, you just look at it. Do you have any clause of that nature? That doesn't mean every transaction should come with a contract.
Of course, not all of them are.
The issue in the port, I gave a very reasonable time. First is to engage the parties. We find ourselves in this situation. And it may even involve third and fourth parties. It's a vicious cycle. The virus doesn't know any borders. So you may have challenges all around. But if you have a clause, you need to notify the parties, as the ship owners were saying. That is not blanket. You need to immediately, you just don't relax. There's a lockdown, but you need to notify the parties. I promise to deliver, but
due as a result, I can't do it. Okay, so that's the advice you are giving. It's an encouragement you are giving. That people should visit their contracts they've entered
orally into. Whatever you need to look at your supply chain to notify that. I don't think I can meet the deadline as stipulated before the lockdown.
Okay.
You know.
Mr. Fosudote, does that make any difference for you?
I agree with him. I mean, perfectly.
And I even gave reasonable time of wanting to listen.
That the name of the game is evidence. I mean, when it comes to anything which is contractual. And definitely, if one party sees a loss as a result of your trying to invoke a force majeure clause, they will try as much as possible to mitigate any impact. And therefore, my general suggestion is that if you want to rely on that clause, then you should be looking for evidence to show that the claim that COVID-19 affected your ability to perform was directly related to COVID-19. That's the danger. I've seen, and I'm a practitioner, I've seen several people running under the cover of COVID when some of their failure to perform has nothing to do with COVID. In fact, some of the contracts will have failed. I mean, their performance will have failed with or without COVID.
Yeah.
So my advice to the other parties, or my suggestion is, much as people will be looking at COVID as a reason to say, force majeure, I'm running under the clause of force majeure, or my contract has been frustrated, you should also be looking at whether or not that failure to perform is directly related to force majeure, because very often it is not. And lastly, to both parties, some of these things will end up in courts, will end up in dispute resolution forums like arbitration, etc. It is important that you gather your evidence now, whether or not your failure to perform is really related to COVID.
Yeah. So he talked about the fact that people should begin to notify the other parties, and that's sort of a condition for force majeure, that you notify the other party. And so, wouldn't you say that this is a good call?
Naturally, in a contract, and again, I want to go back to your example. If you notified me that you are saying that, look, this event has occurred, and you expect a certain number of days, which is a recommendation, to be added, that's a delay. And I'm saying I will simply check. If, for example, you were shipping goods to me, what was your port of origin? How many days does it take for the vessel to arrive here? Had you shipped before the restriction was imposed on that spot? If you had not shipped, you had already delayed. It has nothing to do with force majeure. If the vessel was on the high seas, it would dock in Accra or Tema. The second question I will ask is that, is the item exempted? So I don't want to accept the blanket position.
Yeah, of course. Definitely you defend it. Let me play the World Health Organization Director General's soundbite talking about the International Chamber of Commerce that Mr. Donikwame represents, and asking businesses to help to reduce the impact COVID will have on nations and governments. Because at the end of the day, like you said, Mr. Fosudote, for instance, by the time we are over with COVID, a lot of people are going to troop to arbitrators and courts and asking for a whole lot of issues. So let's listen to the Director General for World Health Organization briefly, and then we'll come back.
I'm grateful for the way the private sector has already stepped up to lend its support. We're happy to work with the ICC and its enormous network in this global fight. This is not just a medical problem. It's having profound societal and economic impacts. We all want this to end quickly, and business has a critical role to play.
Okay, so that's the Director General, World Health Organization, talking about the survey that ICC, for instance, has suggested to the WHO, and also talking about the fact that businesses need to help and play some role so that we minimize the impact of this COVID. Mr. Fosudote, the other example I would seek your suggestion on would be, aside those who have entered in implicit contracts and contracts that are written and all of that and have everything documented, people who have entered into regular and verbal contracts, they form these contracts, some form them before the COVID-19. So I give an example of somebody who is expecting a cargo in Ghana, for instance. And then some have also formed a contract just now within this COVID period. So the person is expected to clear goods for someone, and he's saying that, because of COVID, I can't move, and so I'm not able to clear your goods for you. Then the importer is seated at home waiting for the goods, but probably a freight forwarder is saying that I can't clear your goods for you. And assume that goods, for instance, has an expiry date, and by the time that the freight forwarder is able to clear the goods for the importer, the goods is expired. Then the importer comes in and says, look, I'm taking you on because you've made my goods expire. I've lost money. Then the freight forwarder wants to also say that, look, I was frustrated by COVID. I couldn't go out and clear. Meanwhile, this is a period that the port is saying that we are clearing all goods. Can the importer hide behind frustration as a result of COVID-19? And can the importer also come in and say, look, whether COVID-19 or not, you still have to be liable for the expiration of my goods?
I think there are three issues to look at. And again, we should avoid the danger of generalizing legal issues. Legal issues are context specific. The first issue to look at is the fact that you were talking about a written contract or an unwritten contract. A contract is a contract. I agree that it is better if it is written. But the fact that the contract is not written doesn't mean you cannot assert your right. If actually COVID was actually a frustrating event or created an event where you could make a claim as a result of COVID. So again, I'll go back to the point I made earlier. Everything is about evidence, and evidence is the name of the game. The other thing that is worth drawing attention to when it comes to non-rating contracts relating to the ports is that in the maritime world, or in the world of shipping, there is something called the conditions of carriage. The fact that I did not write an agreement with you doesn't mean that the conditions of carriage do not necessarily apply. Because at times, just the document I'm giving you to sign, or the order, will have a line that says that the general conditions of carriage are applicable. And maybe in those conditions of carriage, I have smuggled in a clause that gives me an exemption in situations like this. So it's important that even if the contract is not written, we take a look at the general conditions or the norms of the industry that may affect such arrangement between two parties. The last thing that is worth drawing attention to has to do with the fact that when somebody, in the instance that you gave, when such situations happen, there are a number of events. Insurance come in, the issues regarding short landing comes in. It's possible that the delay occurred because when the ship got to anchorage, it couldn't berth. And as a result of that, at the end of the day, the goods may arrive, it may be damaged, it may have expired, and therefore technically it will be short landing. So a whole lot of issues affect this. And again, let's go back to the suggestion I made. Let's generalize. Yes, it is true COVID has created an opportunity people can rely on, but an unnecessary reliance on that will also destroy other people's businesses and may not necessarily be upheld at arbitration or the courts.
Exactly. That's what I wanted you to clarify. And before Mr. Donikwame comes in, because it appears that so many people are being tempted to use the COVID as excuses when it comes to performing or non-performing some particular obligations of contracts they have entered into. And by the time this whole COVID thing is over, the fear is that a lot of people would want to run behind this issue of frustration, or the doctrine of frustration, or force majeure as a clause, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Donikwame, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to support what you just said, we're not coming out with a blanket statement. We're keen on business continuity, and as a result, ICC has developed a business continuity guideline, and for companies to develop their own business continuity plan. And it looks at, you need to plan to minimize the disruption of activities within your company. You need to adapt across all the business sectors. And then you also need to monitor the information you get from your National Health Authority or from the WHO.
Yeah.
And then you assess your plan if you need to review it. These are not normal times, you know. And with relations, so we believe people should be keen on at least having a key task force within your organization as the pandemic team. That will be there. And then talking of the ports, I believe we've done a lot as far as developing a single window or even going paperless at the MPS Terminal 3. So you don't expect goods to be stuck at the port for contracts to get into issues to do with force majeure. I don't expect such cases as far as trade facilitation is concerned. It may go into construction contracts or other contracts. But trade facilitation, I wouldn't expect anybody, because our ports are open.
Yeah.
You know.
Fortunately, I'm happy you mentioned that the ports are open, and we're retreating that the ports are open. But last week, for instance, we were here and we had calls from manufacturing companies saying that they brought in some raw materials and they are being kicked and all of that. Somebody says I've imported, I have 80 containers, and you know things are slowing and all of that. Isn't there a possibility that some of these people will come back and raise some contractual issues?
The good thing is I'm a member of the National Trade Facilitation Committee as an observer. ICC is part of the Global Alliance, which is actually working with the National Trade Facilitation Committee. At our last meeting, we had a virtual meeting where we discussed these things in depth. Issues of PPEs for customs officers, not just at the ports, but even at the transit joint border post. You know, because we have goods in transit moving into other African countries, and they all need PPEs. The issue to do with early release, as I said, we've gone paperless. We've also done a walkthrough at MPS Terminal 3, and the issues has to do with the way we do business over here.
Okay.
Can we do 24 hours? Can we have a shift system? Should all freight forwarders get their documents at the same time and queue at the same time? Can they have a situation whereby our ports are run, MPS is run 24 hours? So can we have people scheduled working from their laptops and scheduled to clear their goods throughout the day, not at one particular time where everybody rushes and they all end up queuing at the same time? Okay. There should be a way around these things.
Okay.
How do we operate a cashless system at the port, apart from going paperless? As I mentioned, with the airport, we already have a challenge. Luckily for me, I was part of the team that met with the Commissioner General of GRA. And he's keen on addressing that issue as we brought it to the fore. That the technical working group of the NTFC realized that in as much as the Vice President says everybody should go paperless, we still have challenges at the airport. And you realize that as long as people are not moving, goods are still moving. Airlines are converting their aircrafts into cargo planes because essential goods need to get to their right destination on time. They don't need to come through our ports only. So a lot is being done, and I think the private sector has a role to play. There needs to be more collaboration between parties. We may be in our homes, but we could still dialogue and then find solutions to these issues at the port.
Okay. Let me go to Mr. Kofi. Hello,
yes.
Mr. Kofi. Good. So let me find out from you if PMOCA, Port Management Association of West and Central Africa, you are offering any support to ports in your member countries, for instance, within this period. Is there any support you're giving?
Yeah. The support of PMOCA is in order of raising awareness among its members.
Okay.
Very soon that this crisis occur, that the Secretariat of PMOCA took a following measure: suspension of association meeting to avoid gathering and contact, drafting a circular note for members to observe barrier measure, regular monitoring and advice to port fraud liaison officers, environmental managers, health and safety managers.
Okay.
We have an also interaction with harbor masters to measure the impact of the measure taken and communicate on the measure of IMO, GPHA in terms of good practice.
Okay.
In partnership with certain international partners. You have subsidiaries in our countries. Discussions are underway for assistance and hydroalcoholic gel and mask. This is what action we are doing with PMOCA members.
Okay.
Because it is difficult to reach them, but you try to call with them and to maintain the contact and to know what is better to do to cope with this disease.
Okay.
So what, for now, what we are doing?
Okay. And what advice are you giving ports in times like this to take advantage of technology?
Yeah, to take advantage of technology, you have always talked about it. Because you cannot that the consequence of this crisis is a revision of how to work, the methodology. Some platforms are more advanced in terms of digitalization, which save employees for physical interaction.
Okay.
Many of them are unfortunately forced for physical contact. So you told them to use, how to say, to work on a way to divide the team and to maintain, to work with the platform. And if it is not necessary, it's not better to go to work and to be in contact with many persons.
Okay. And finally, what lessons do you think ports within this region have learned from this COVID-19 pandemic?
Please?
What lessons have we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, what you can tell is that according to this COVID-19, you have changed our methodology of work. The lesson is that you have to digitalization our procedure and to work online sometimes. Now we are talking about a single window, and we have with European Union a project named IPQA, and we have 6 ports. With them we are working with fund pilots. With them we are working to share the experiences to port members to follow it. We are obliged now to are going to single windows in all the ports to be sure that what you are doing, you are not enough contact, and you are sure that everything you are doing better to cope with this all the disease.
Okay, and is this supposed to be across all the ports within the region, or can we harmonize it across the entire region?
Yes, you will harmonize our approach. That's why I told you that you have for now in the ECOWAS region 6 port pilots.
Okay.
After that, we will share the experiences and we will harmonize all the approach.
Okay.
To have the same approach for all ports and to work very well, to work better.
Nice. Monsieur Kofi, thank you. I promise you that the next time I'll be talking to you, I'll be speaking French to you so that we will all be a par. Some of the words I won't find difficulty in saying them in French for you. But I got a message again on the Abidjan Minister of Transport release. It says that the measures are meant for import goods and goods in transit. It is not just for Malian goods, so it's for all import goods in transit as well. Mr. Fosudote, I'm going to come to you and find out from you that the request by the finance minister asking that what should a finance minister in Africa do? If you were in his position, I would love for you to give us the advice that you would want to share. But let me also let you know, since you wanted to know something about the rent that's been charged. Rents are charged by Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority as well as the terminals. It's not just Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. So MPS as well, the TBT, the Safe-Born terminals, amongst others, they all charge rent.
Okay, so I mean, my advice will be in 3 areas. One will be fairly, largely domestic, which is simple, that as much as possible, all measures that enable us cut costs should be put in place, and I'm confident he is doing that because there is definitely going to be a very big hit on his income and finances. There's no doubt about that. He knows that very well. So the more costs we can cut, the better. The second advice will be at the wider Africa level, which is that I think and again it's in the Afro Champions recommendations that the financing approach, especially relating to COVID-19, should be coordinated in such a way that it has an impact on the private sector. A lot of companies are going to have challenges. Some companies will go down by the end of COVID-19. If we don't arrange the recovery plan on the financing so that we can bring these companies on stream and recreate jobs, we may have a much longer impact on the economy than we will have if we do that. So, for example, those SMEs and the rest, if they fit more into the supply chain and we reduce the amount of reliance on imports, it is more likely that we will recover faster. They will be the ones who in the long run will pay the taxes. And the last one again, which goes to Africa, I think this is the time for us to accelerate our e-commerce and digital economy protocols and ensure that we take advantage of technology, just like the other speakers have said, because we've all learned how to work from home, how to work from remote. We may go back to normal to some extent when COVID is over, but this is an opportunity for us to accelerate and increase e-commerce and the digital economy, and we can then eventually increase our tax receipts. Yeah.
Okay, let me take you back again. What advice would you give to the finance minister to take from businesses? What can businesses offer to mitigate whatever challenges the government may be going through, if you're advising the finance minister?
Is it for me or for the gentleman in the studio?
For you, actually. For small, I'm trying to narrow it down to, let's say, business. Let's say the shipping industry. Let's say SMEs. What can they contribute to mitigate the hardships that will be born out of this COVID pandemic?
I think it's more the other way around, as to rather how governments can help businesses to rather recover.
You don't think businesses can help the other way around too?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Businesses can help the other way around. Remember, a lot of businesses have contributed to the COVID-19 fund as an example, AGI, etc. But the way businesses can help better is when government puts in place policies that enable businesses to recover quickly. And a lot of them have been done. For example, Bank of Ghana's policy directives on to the banks, reducing the reserve ratio, etc. These are all very positive policies. What I rather think we should do more is to focus on the implementation aspect so that businesses can recover as quickly as possible. And that is why I made that recommendation I want to emphasize on our digital economy and e-commerce. Let's focus on the digital economy part. Okay. If we do very well on that, it will be easy to track what businesses are doing, including the informal sector. And if we formalize a bit of that informal sector, you will realize that we can get more receipts. And if there is one big lesson that we should all learn from this, and talking about businesses, you will notice that I believe 90% of the businesses which have shut down are in the formal sector, who are the ones who largely are the ones who pay formal taxes, for the want of a better word. The ones which we are all worried about, the kaya, those who do hand to mouth, are the ones that we have had to support with food, who are in town and who gives us, quote and unquote, the bit of the worry. But the taxes from them are not as large as you may have from the informal sector. So the more we try to digitize and, formalize the sector, the more we can broaden the tax net. I think there is one particular point which is worth drawing attention to. I meant to earlier, but I almost forgot. The issue has to do with our borders.
Okay.
Much as COVID may be over, I think that in terms of the land borders, we may have to close it for a much longer period, because the question of imported COVID cases is likely to linger for a period, which would then affect the whole issue of free movement of goods and persons. I think there should be a stricter arrangement. So the government revenue in that aspect will suffer for a much longer period. But that is where we need to pay attention to, and then see how we balance the forces. In the long run, I think if businesses recover quickly, government can get more taxes quickly. Okay.
Thank you for now. But this, I just got a message from GC Bank. GCB Bank, in addition to opening of the Safe Bond branch, Golden Jubilee branch terminal agency, has extended banking hours from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. For Tema Main, Tema Long Room, and Jubilee terminal agencies. So customers can also pay their duties at all GCB branches, as well as pay using their online payment platform. So extended time from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And they are saying that Jubilee terminal agencies, the Long Room terminal, as well as the Tema Main. Okay, so you can send some comments if you are interested and you're following. I see quite a number coming through, but the numbers are on your screen. WhatsApp is 0559019177. I may not be able to pick calls because we have to be handing to the president who will be speaking to the nation pretty shortly. But if you can do it very fast, the number you can call on 020-552-8353. You can share your thoughts with those of us who are also here. And this one says, we depend from our daily work. They have to think about us, because Get Banku self now. Okay, that it's not too clear. Since our ports are paperless and digitized, human contact is considerably reduced, why can't we clear all goods in face at the ports? That's comment. This one said, good evening. I am an importer. Is it true that government has approved the COVID-19 fees to be charged by the customs at KIA? An agent cleared goods for me at the airport last Friday, and he said the customs charged me $106 as a COVID-19 fee. Please clarify this for me. This, I have never heard this anywhere, that government has introduced a COVID-19. I don't know about this. You've mentioned in particular customs duty, and I'm going to get clarifications from the commissioner pretty shortly for you, but I can tell you on top of my head that I haven't heard this come from any of the agencies yet. Hello, good evening. I am Kofi from Ochikrom. Please, we are suffering here, no food, no. Okay, so I'm watching your program live and they need food in Ochikrom. Hello, Mr. Ajiman. You are doing a good work. Please, some of the shipping lines are not doing a good job with the agents. Grimaldi shipping line to get invoice take you 2 days, and Maersk too. And I want to know how many security men come to exit gate to check goods that go out. I'm talking about Golden Jubilee Terminal exit. This is Nathaniel from Pung. This one says, okay, so I think we've got a release from the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority that I should be reading shortly. But Mr. Kwame, so what's our take home from the ICC?
We've always advocated for the smooth implementation of the WT, World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement. And almost all these issues are captured in the articles. My colleagues spoke about we fast-tracking our implementation of creating a digital economy. And it starts with the public institutions. We expect the ministries, departments, and agencies to have the issuance of even permits online. You know, there should be a situation whereby Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Trade, their systems are integrated such that in these trying times, people can work from home. You can apply for your permits. A permit can be approved online. You don't need to show your face at the port. You know, you visit elsewhere, you visit well-developed ports, and you realize that you hardly see people at the ports. We may not have the kind of infrastructure they have, but our government is doing a lot, at least in the area of electricity and water during these challenging times. There is a package. If we had rail and other means of transport available, at least you can stay at home, send your documents online, pay your fees online, and then your goods will be delivered at the place which is captured in your contract as far as delivery is concerned. So we want to add our voice to those who are also calling for us to fast-track that aspect. COVID-19 is exposed us a bit. We've been paying lip service to issues to do with paperless, cashless, but we should use this opportunity to really fix the various challenges that keep on emerging, so that come tonight, in case the president even extends the lockdown, we hope things will improve as to the various interventions, be it food, as some of the tests are calling for food. These are some of the side effects of some of the interventions that has been presented by government.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we wrapping up shortly, but the text on COVID-19 fees being charged, I've got another texter who says that it is true. Swissport at the airport have introduced COVID-19 levy. Please check. So we're going to do that cross-checking quickly. Solomon, Anderson, and Frank, let's get that quickly checked and then inform viewers quickly on that one. The copy and paste lockdown will kill us quicker than COVID-19. And that's this gentleman's view. But he says, I want to contribute to the show. Some tech firms in the country have put this together as a way we know will save the country from COVID-19 faster using technology. We are looking for businesses to come back to work as soon as these measures are implemented. A summary is on the first page. And okay, so he's got a document sent. About 80% of Ghana's workforce are informal. We need to start looking at getting out of the lockdown as soon as possible. So we got a release from the Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority that says usage of personal protective equipment, PPEs, and if I can read it clearly, it says compliments from the Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority in spite of our best efforts to mitigate the potential catastrophic impact of COVID-19 on the ports and its environs. It is becoming clear that the evolving nature of the virus means we all need to be constantly on our guards to enable us comprehensively remove this threat within the context of our industry survival and the country at large. Upon a review done by the COVID-19 interagency committee to ascertain progress chalked thus far, we have noted with deep concern that some of your staff have either not been provided with the requisite PPEs, especially nose masks, as per our previous advice, or refuse to use them. And this situation poses an existential threat to our collective fight to nab this novel virus in the bud. In view of the above unfortunate information coming to our attention, a firm and uncompromising stand has been taken on the issue because we believe that this will help us protect our staff and all port users in this critical time. Therefore, from Tuesday, April 21, 2020, we will be implementing our no mask, no work strategy. That's the Ghana Port and Harbors Authority says, no mask, no work strategy. This means anyone who intends to work within the port operational areas will be required to have a nose mask on before being allowed by the security officers or the security personnel of the Port and Harbors Authority. Similarly, all terminal staff and assigns are required to abide by the directive. The monitoring team will be carrying periodic assessment on compliance, and anyone found culpable will be sanctioned. So they're asking the entire port community to take note. You've got to have your nose mask on and have all the PPEs, relevant ones. Otherwise, you would not be allowed to work within the port. Folks, the guests that I have been dealing with as far as this subject is concerned, legal practitioner and senior partner at AB and David Africa, Mr. David Ofosu-Dote, also Mr. Emmanuel Doni Kwame is the Secretary General, International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. Mr. Jean-Marie Kofi is the Secretary General of Port Management Association of Western Central Africa. On the phone and far distant, we spoke to Mr. Adam Imoro Ayana, who is a Council Membership Owners and Agents Association of Ghana. And we've been dealing with frustrations associated with the trade and protocols that have arisen as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic. In just a few minutes from now, His Excellency the President of the Republic should be talking to the nation. I'm sure it's about time we all pay attention and listen to the next step. Thanks for watching. See you same time next week. COVID-19 free, as I've always said. Ensure that you use your hand sanitizer almost all the time and use the nose mask as well. So don't come. You have yours? I saw you even wanted to come and do the interview with it. So try and you wear these things. Be safe so that you can watch us healthy next week.